Okay, so I think we're ready to start. We're going to be discussing this coming week's Torah portion. It starts off today. It's in the Torah world. This is called the week of Chai Yisora, which is the Torah portion this coming Shabbos. So just to get us up to speed a little bit in general, where we're up to in the Torah, and then just refresh some ideas that are relevant to today's discussion. The Torah, we're now making our way through the book of Genesis, and we've started the unfolding of the not only the biographical sketches, but the spiritual sketches of Abraham and Sarah. And so we've been introduced to Abraham, and Abraham is someone who grown up, and Sarah have grown up in a polytheistic world. They are firmly committed to monotheism, and monotheism means not only that it's not only a numbers game, that we don't believe in 7 gods or 5 gods or 3 gods. We whittled it down to one. In other words, a person who believes in 3 gods is not more of a monotheist than someone who believes in 5 gods. It's not a numbers game. It's a perspective on the world, a perspective on God. And I don't want to get too much into that right now, but the idea is that Abraham believes that there's a creator, a loving creator who creates everything and is part of everything, and everything is part of this creator's plan for reality. There's a purpose, and every being in this world has purpose. So every being in this world deserves respect, and every being in this world matters, and every being in this world has potential to fulfill what God has set out for them to do. So this we have here in this week's Torah portion, we're getting a little bit more to actually what we read yesterday was the last we had of Sarah being alive, because she passes away somewhere between the end of the last week's Torah portion and this week's Torah portion. We don't have exactly an account of her death per se, but we do. The Torah portion does begin with the idea that she passed away, and now Abraham has to bury her, but it's not like she's on her deathbed. So we're now unfolding these generations, and again, technically, and it is relevant till today, they're not Jews. You'll hear Abraham and Sarah were the first Jews, and I'm not going to disagree with that reference, but it's technically not correct, because Jews did not begin until Sinai. Sinai was a mass conversion, and Abraham and Sarah were Hebrews. They began the Hebrew family, the Hebrew culture, the Hebrew people, and Hebrew meant that they were monotheistic and they were different, counterculturalists we call them, but they weren't yet Jews. And part of what means the difference between them and being actual Jews is that Jews had mitzvahs, and the mitzvahs means, I'm just going to put it a second. Mitzvahs means that we have commandments to do, and it means engaging in the physical world. That's a big part of who we are as Jews. They didn't really have mitzvahs. They didn't have mitzvahs at that level. There was one mitzvah, which they're given, which Abraham was given, and was told to be able to circumcise himself. A mitzvah in a physical sense. There literally, it was in the flesh. So that's the only physical mitzvah they had. Our tradition, in both in the Talmud tells us, and there's certainly a Kabbalistic tradition, but it's something that's undeniable within the spiritual rhythm of how we see our patriarchs and matriarchs, is that they were sensitive to the ideas of mitzvahs, because mitzvahs are putting up a mezuzah, for example, is the one I will usually use if I talk about it. Putting up a mezuzah is taking this parchment in a case, putting in a couple nails, and you got your mitzvah. There's an idea to it. The idea is that we proclaim oneness before we walk into a room that is ours, something we are doing something within a specific area, and it has a certain flavor to it. This is where we eat, this is where we sleep, this is where we do our business. And the proclamation of a mezuzah is that whatever goes on in here, because the mezuzah has the Shema in the parchment that's in the case, whatever goes on in here, we want it to be, and we see it as being in sync with the great oneness of the world and of our lives. And therefore we don't want it to be detached from the oneness of our lives. We don't want it to make it a selfish exercise, or God forbid, a counterproductive, self-destructive, or hurtful exercise. We want it to be, whatever's going on here, we want to be in sync with the oneness. That's an idea. And it takes form of the physical mezuzah that we put up on our doorposts. The idea that Abraham and Sarah, as the Talmud tells us, they fulfilled all the mitzvahs. No one believes that they actually put up a mezuzah like us, because that form of it didn't exist. But the idea of somehow illustrating, as you walked into their tent, that they saw whatever goes on in their tent as being part of the oneness of the world, we do believe that. And therefore we find, it says, the Kabbalah tells us that Jacob put on tefillin, clearly not the tefillin we use now, but and it talks, I don't want to get it off track here, but it just funky things that for how we did it, just the idea of the consciousness that tefillin, higher consciousness that tefillin brings to us. So they did not do usually the physical mitzvahs, but they were certainly in sync. Now, one of the mitzvahs, and we're going to talk about that today, is the mitzvah of Shabbos candles. Now, Shabbos candles actually doesn't say that in the Torah at all. Shabbos candles technically are a rabbinic institution. There is no thou shalt light Shabbos candles in the Torah. The Shabbos candles reflect a spiritual concept which they were sensitive to, and which our spiritual greats have told us they actually implemented. They lit. We're told that Sarah, Rivka, so they actually lit candles to welcome Shabbos, because Shabbos was something that they knew since Adam and Eve. That was a special day. Now, just as some background to that, if you lit Shabbos candles, it's if you think about it, it's Shabbos is coming. It's a time to shut out the world. It's a spiritual day. It is a woman's role generally, to be able, unless there's no woman in the house, to be able to usher in, to welcome the Shabbos. And it's something, there's a certain, even almost a romantic end to it. And one of the things we find in our rabbinic literature, and not everything's going to be written over here, is that it's a time of that Shabbos in general, and the idea of lighting the Shabbos candles is about shalom bayit, is the Hebrew expression, means peace in the home. You're at home, people, different opinions, you got to share the remote or whatever it is, and then the things are going to come up. Friday night is the idea of there's a focus on shalom bayis, and the Shabbos candles are part of ushering that in. Now, when I was, and this will come up somewhat in today's course, when I remember being a yeshiva student and studying in the Talmud the analysis of Shabbos candles, and I was surprised, because I'm learning, but I was surprised to see that Shabbos candles are presented in the Talmud as utilitarian, just to make sure no one trips. Friday night, it's dark, there's no electrician. That's what it is. It says they should not trip on a piece of wood or a stone. And to me, having grown up, Shabbos candles, Friday night, peace in the home. The peace in the home is no one's bloody. You didn't scrape any meat. It was really. It was something that was a little startling to me, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it, of what it means, because it was a utilitarian thing, but also there's a deeper element to it all. So, and how we're talking about the very idea of Shabbos candles and its special place in the Jewish panorama, so to speak. So let's start in 78. says this is a parsha overview for this coming week's Torah portion. Again, we're not going to touch on all of these ideas. It's just this is giving you a Reader's Digest snapshot of the Torah portion. Sarah dies at age 127. And 127 is quite old for us, but and this is going to come up a little later. The ages are, and the ages as we find them in the Torah are very hard to get. I mean, I live here too. It's hard to get your mind around it. 127 for me is easier than 927, but it's still difficult. Okay, and we're going to go in the other direction too later on. Sarah dies at age 127 and is buried in the Machpelah cave in Hebron. Because the reason I'm saying is because even sometimes we talk about people doing things when they were very young, which to us is totally not developmentally it doesn't sane. It doesn't make sense. But as the Torah describes it, and even you can even see in the times of the Talmud where the people were living in more what I would consider normal parameters, they saw a shift in the physical realities and human realities, especially when it comes to age. In the times there were patriarchs and matriarchs until later days. So meanwhile, she dies at 127. She's buried in the Machpelah cave in Hebron, which you can still go see. And I go there anytime I'm in Israel, which Abraham purchased from Ephron the Hittite for 400 shekels of silver. Abraham's servant Eliezer is sent laden with gifts to Haran to find a wife for Isaac. At the village well, Eliezer asks God for a sign. When the maidens come to the well, he will ask for some water to drink. The woman who will offer to give his camels water to drink as well shall be the one destined for his master's son. So he sets up a test. So God, send me a sign, and I want to see who's going to offer water not only to me but for my camels. It's caring, loving. That was an Abraham type of thing. Rebecca, the daughter of Abraham's nephew Bethuel, appears at the well and passes the test. So it happens to be Abraham's great niece, the girl. Eliezer is invited to their home, where he repeats the story of the day's events. Rebecca returns with Eliezer to the land of Canaan, where they encounter Isaac praying in the field. Isaac marries Rebecca, loves her, and is comforted over the loss of his mother. Abraham then takes a new wife, Keturah, some people say it's Hagar, and he fathers 6 additional sons. But as Isaac is designated as his only heir, and in this week's Torah portion, Abraham dies towards the end of the Torah portion at age 175. Okay, we're pushing it more. And his 2 eldest sons, Isaac and Ishmael, bury Abraham next to Sarah. Okay, so if you go to Hebron, which you can go with a bulletproof car, you'll be able to go to the cave of the Machpelah and be able to see the burial sites of, somewhat see the burial sites of Abraham and Sarah and their children, Yitzchak and Rivka, and Yaakov and Leah. Okay. Now let's get to the Torah portion. The search for a matriarch. What happens? Abraham is getting older. We had last week's Torah portion. Abraham and his son Isaac had been offered as God told him to bring him as an offering. He thought he was going to actually have to die. He did not die, and now Abraham says, "Marry this kid off before it's too late." And Abraham says to his servant, the elder of his house, who ruled over all his possessions, "Please place your hand under my thigh." Now, this is also a little, different for our way of thinking. Why did he put his hand under his thigh? He didn't put a hand under his thigh because in those days, today, you'd put your hand on a Chumash, on the Torah, on something, a holy article, something physical, holy article. There were no mitzvahs. There were no holy articles. The only holy article they had was the bris. Take it. That's the way it is. So place your hand under my thigh. Promise me by God, the God of the heaven, not my rules. Promise me by my God, God of the heaven and the God of the earth, that you will not take a wife from my son, from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I live. Rather, go to my land and my birthplace and take a wife from my son Isaac. Abraham says, I live in these places. I don't like the culture. I want better for my son. He's very sensitive, he's spiritual, he's monotheist. And I need someone to be able to be, he needs someone to be his partner in monotheism, monotheistic tradition. Please find someone. So then the Medrash tells us it is a 17-day journey from Kiryat Arba. Kiryat Arba is still today, it's part of Hebron, where Abram lived, to Haran. Haran is in Turkey, where Rebecca lived. Yet the servant arrived in Haran in 3 hours, which is obviously a miracle. That's text 1b on page 80. He wondered about this, saying, oh, 1 second, I wanted to bring up a share screen. I apologize. One day I'll get this straight. Okay, so for some reason it's not coming up. Maybe just. Okay, I hope. Where's the mouse? Let's see if this was. Sorry about this. I wanted to be able to show everyone the text. Thanks a lot, Mike. But obviously, I'm not doing a good job with this. Okay. Okay. So there's this, and then we have. Please put your hand on my thigh, and now we're up to. Let's move that along. Okay. So today he wondered about this as saying, today I departed and today I arrived. He said, this is miraculous. So what's going on here? Obviously, this is something that God is guiding me on. So text 1c, go back to this week's Torah portion. And he said, God, the God of my master Abraham, please cause this to happen to me today and perform a kindness for my master Abraham. Behold, I stand at the water fountain as the daughters of the people of the city come to draw water. Sorry. And come to draw water, and it'll be that the maiden to whom I say, lower your pitcher and I will drink, and she says, drink, and I will also water your camels. She is the one you have provided for your servant Isaac, and with her I will know that you have performed the kindness to my master. So even though he has obviously had divine guidance and the wind at his back, this miraculously short journey, he says, I still need more help. I need you to help me choose. And here we have from the Medrash, text 1d on 81, everything is foreseen by God. A daughter of princes who had not gone out to draw water in the past went out to draw water at this precise moment. In other words, Rebecca, she's not someone who generally would do the water drawing. As to who the man was, he was a perfect stranger, yet she consented to be betrothed to Isaac. We didn't get to that part yet. Why? Because she was intended for him yet from her mother's room. So Eliezer says, "This is the girl. She's nice." He asks, "Can I have some water?" And she says, "Let me give you your camels." And she says, "Thank you, God. We had this. You didn't even agree to it. I just made this pact. You followed along, and now I have someone. And my gosh, she's from Abraham's family. It all works because inbreeding wasn't such a problem in those days. So it wasn't seen as such a problem. So the text 1e, at midday, the servant, along with Rebecca and her nursemaid Deborah, departed that land riding on camels. The road leaped ahead of him, and he arrived in heaven in 3 hours. So there is a lot of give and take in this week's Torah portion. It's a separate conversation, which it's unusual for the Torah. We have the whole conversation. He said, she said, they said, back and forth, and then it's repeated again as he repeats it over. It's actually very unusual, not the subject of today's conversation, but this week's Torah portion, there's a lot of what would say storyline that we don't usually get. It's usually we just get, this is what happened, like a sentence, because Torah is very concise. So, but they do go through all this, and Rebecca's family is agreeable that she go off to marry Isaac, their cousin, their nephew, and at midday they go back together with Eliezer, who was the chief of staff for Abraham, and the rope lead ahead of him, leaped ahead of him, and he arrived in heaven in 3 hours. So there also they had this miraculous haste in being able to get on the way back also. So God's going along with this whole deal. Now, text, no. Now, and this is a critical part of it all. It says, Isaac brought her into the tent. This is text 1F, 82. The Torah says, Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah, her mother. It doesn't say Isaac married her. It says he heard what happened. He heard the whole deal. He's happy to see her. He takes her into the tent of Sarah, his mother, and then he takes Rebecca and she becomes his wife. Now, not that she became his wife and he took her into his tent. They went into the tent, and somehow going into the tent convinced him, this is, I like her, everything seems to work. Dad says she works for me, but after going to the tent, he decides to marry, she becomes his wife. He loves her and is consoled for the loss of his mother. Okay. Let me just see this. Yes. So now let's go to 1G. What the Medrash tells us about this. He brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother. It's an odd thing. He married her. Or you say he married her and he took her home. That phrase, it sticks out there. What was it about? Brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother. All the days, the Medrash tells us, all the days of Sarah's life, a cloud hovered over the tent. When she passed away, the cloud disappeared. When Rebecca entered the tent, the cloud reappeared. Okay, so the Medrash is telling us a very, very central idea that helps form how we see what went on with Abraham, Yitzchak marrying Rivka, and who Sarah was. So the tent wasn't just a canvas place for camping or for living. The tent represents her home. And her home was very special. Her home, there were certain spiritual things going on there, or more supernatural things going on there, that were actually even obvious to the naked human eye. One of the things was that over her tent, and we see it as her tent, because if she wasn't there, there was a cloud. And the cloud later on, when it comes to Mount Sinai, the cloud is a way of this like holiness resting on a certain area. Like on Mount Sinai, there was a cloud over the mountain. So there's this cloud hovering over the tent. When she passed away, the cloud disappeared. Abraham's still here, but the Sarah flavor is not here. When Rebecca entered the tent, the cloud reappeared. When he went with her into her mother's tent, he saw that it wasn't just, this is someone, of course, he wants someone he's going to marry, it's going to be his wife. She was restoring something that had been missing since Sarah passed away. First of all, there's the cloud. The Medrash goes further. All the days of Sarah's life, the dough had been blessed. She would cook inside the tent, and the dough had been blessed. What does the dough had been blessed mean? The different commentaries on that it always stayed fresh, that it was especially filling. But the idea is that he was able to see that there was something different going on there, because when she passed away, this blessing ceased, and when Rebecca entered the tent, the blessing returned. And the third thing that he was able to see, all the days of Sarah's life, the candle would burn from Friday night to Friday night. She would light Shabbos candles. But Shabbos candles, you light Shabbos candles, by Shabbos morning, they're out. Right? You don't need them anymore, and you don't want them going on that long. But when she passed away, hers would burn from Friday night to Friday night. Something about the light that she brought to the world for Shabbos was something that persisted through the week. When she passed away, the flame stopped burning. In other words, from Friday night to Friday night. Abraham presumably lit, but they were out by Shabbos morning. When Rebecca entered the tent, the miraculous flame returned. So now we understand, the Medrash is saying, now we can understand the flow of the verses, that Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah's mother, and when he saw that she was, aside from a pretty face and someone he could grow to love, someone who restored to his life and to the mission. I mean, Isaac was looking ahead at what's going to be. He has to make a people. God said you're going to have people. You have a lot of kids. There's going to be you're going to create a nation, and it's a nation of monotheism. He was worried about his legacy, about his mission. And now, not only was this someone who could marry, but someone who was restoring that Sarah flavor to the Hebrew legacy, like the mission. So then immediately he brought him to the son of Sarah's mother. So that was, he had now approval not only from his father, but from his mother. Okay. So now let's get a little more into that. That's an interesting story. But now we're going to say, what does it mean in our world? This is a text 284 is from one of the greats of the 16th century, the Maharal in Prague. I think I can mention, he was mentioned last week also. Those who heard the story of the Golem of Prague, he's the Golem maker. It says 3 miracles parallel the 3 commandments that are uniquely related to women. Women have mitzvahs. Women have all the negative mitzvahs they'll have. In other words, mitzvah of fasting in Kippur and not eating non-kosher, all that stuff is equal to men and women. There are a number of more time-related mitzvahs that are targeted at men, and women don't have to keep. And then there are three which are, it's not that men can't do them, but they are considered feminine mitzvahs. All of these 3 mitzvahs are ones that a man partakes in and a man can do, but they're seen as feminine mitzvahs, and therefore it's in their hands. And the first, to also, if my wife or daughters are home, even though I can do the mitzvah and I can make a blessing, it's really within the hands of femininity. 3 miracles parallel 3 commandments that are uniquely related to women. It says the prevalence of blessing in the dough parallels the mitzvah to separate challah from the dough. So here I just want to bring this up, Jewish fun facts. We eat challah on Shabbos. Challah, in the minds of even someone like me who grew up here, challah conventionally is the braided bread eaten on Shabbos. You can use it for French toast on Tuesdays also, but it's challah. It's a Shabbos bread. That actually, that's correct, but that's not what challah actually means. Where it comes from. Challah is a biblical word which refers to a tithe. Torah tells us that when we bake bread, and a significant amount, 59 ounces, let's say, in today's things of dough. So therefore, part of that is before we're going to make bread, but we have to take off some of that for charity. And in the days of old, the charity was to give the public servants the coin. So you could not eat your bread until you gave challah to the coin. Challah was not a braided loaf. Challah was the amount you gave to the coin. I assume that from that, since baking was primarily done probably for Shabbos, because there you have to have 2 loaves, Friday night and Shabbos. So those were times you took challah. So I guess somehow challah became the term for the loaves of bread. And I don't know where the braids come in. That's above my pay grade. But the loaves of bread for Shabbos somehow became known as challah. But challah is a tithe. Today, we still take challah, but because there's no temple in one of the tithes, that piece of dough gets charred, and it's not usable. And we put it aside, and part of it is recognizing that, but generally in life, the challah mindset, like the charity mindset in general, is that what I have, that God blesses me with, is a blessing, and it's a sign of trust that God wants me to use it correctly. But I have to see it as not just in mine. I want to be able to recognize that God's my partner, and when I give to the poor, when I give to charity, I'm giving. It's not just me being benevolent and giving of mine. That's true in our consciousness, but really what I'm doing is I'm giving my partner part of what they deserve in the revenue. So here we don't want to eat it all ourselves. you can't give it to the Kohen. I mean, you can give something to a Kohen, but it doesn't have that level of the sanctity. So we burn it. It becomes charred. But we make a blessing. We take off the challah. We put it to the side. So the prevalence of blessing in the dough parallels the mitzvah to separate challah from the dough. Who does that usually? Like I said, I could do that. I have done. But it's seen as a women's mitzvah, and we'll explain more of how this relates to femininity. But this is from Rabbi Yehuda, the Maharal, what he writes. The candle burning from Friday to Friday parallels the mitzvah to light Shabbos candles. So that was easy. So that's again, I can light a Shabbos candle if Nachli's not home, and I will light a Shabbos candle if none of the women are home. But it's in the hands. Clearly, the preference is to have a woman do it. Cloud hovering above the tent parallels family purity, because the cloud of glory is the glory of the blessed divine presence. All this is in honor of the sanctity and purity in Sarah's home. So the family purity is a euphemism for something that's an essential part of Jewish life, which is that in Jewish married life, that we follow a rhythm of a Torah rhythm that guides our physical intimacy as far as couples are concerned, and it's based on the woman's flow, and it's really obviously it's two partners there. It's a man and a woman, but the idea is to try to make sure to bring in, because there's times where we have to abstain from physical intimacy, never from love, but from physical intimacy. There are different ways to show love, and the idea of that abstention is a time where we learn to relate and to each other and show our love, not necessarily to the physical intimacy, because physical intimacy ideally is pleasurable for each party. So there can be a very selfish motive to physical intimacy. And what the Torah wants is us to recognize it's not that each one enjoys, that's great, but really it's about coming together, that it's a mechanism that God has given us. It's a blessing that we have that helps draw two people together. And we want it to be more about the we than the me, each one. And the idea of having that kind of sanctity and non-selfish, non-self-oriented perspective in the home, recognize that even the things that we have and the blessings we have and the pleasure we have is really hopefully for a higher purpose. Men should be doing the exact same thing and being high-minded about it, but it's seen as more something within this skill set of the femininity to bring that type of mindset, and that's kind of anchored in but it's not exclusive to the idea of family purity. Okay, so having said that, so now Sarah was someone who brought these three things to the world: the challah, the Shabbos candles, and the family purity. So now think about that in the scope of what we've already studied in the Torah. In the Torah, we're told that Adam and Eve were the first couple. Adam and Eve are brought into a world that is God's world, and they're able. He said, partake of the world. But they are able. God gives them the ability to see in the world its meaning. I'm just going to stop the share for a second. God gives Adam and Eve are able to look at a tree and see in it, not just right now, it's a tree. There's no leaves. I'm looking at a tree right now. That one doesn't have any fruits ever, but it's a tree. It's living. But they were able to look at a tree and see its purpose. Not even to have to come to guide their minds to think and say this has a purpose. They were able to look at the world and they saw its purpose. They were very, very spiritually sensitized to be able, and to immediately understand the value of the world and the godly value of the world and how everything matters. Once they looked at a fruit, and I think we may have discussed this last week or the week before. If not, it is relevant here. They had one tree that told, "Don't eat from that tree. You can have all the pleasures of the world. Don't eat from there." So then they look at it and say, "Well, that tree is there to test our discipline. Should be no problem." The beginning of the problem is when the Torah, as the Torah writes, when they looked at the fruit and they saw it was luscious to the eyes. There's nothing wrong with seeing something as luscious to the eyes. But what they saw, it was, in other words, they saw in it, this isn't about what God wants out of it. It's going to be good. It's going to taste good. I think it's going to do something for my sensual pleasure. Once they unplugged from this idea of the world exists for a purpose, into the world is about me, a place for me to get my pleasure, they shifted the dynamic between the human and the world. And until this day, we're working to try to bring our mind's eye, whether it's God, purpose, meaning, morality, because the things that jump out at you are not necessarily the moral things. And when you look at the world doesn't shout morality to you. And you really have to really work to be able to say, someone says, here, if we just do this, I can make easy money. So money you can see, what you can buy with the money you can see, that's all very plain. If it's not a moral way of earning that money, your mind has to tell you this is trefa money. It even as easy as it looks, and no one's going to catch me. It's not. I exist for something better than that. Not even if it's true that no one's going to catch me. I don't want to be able to have something in me that really doesn't belong to me. So we are trying to get. Even if we can't see the godliness in the world, we want to see it in our mind's eye. When Mashiach comes, well, we told in text 3, I'm going to come back up to this as I come, sorry. It says, and God, your teacher, will no longer be concealed from you, and your eyes will behold your teacher. Interesting that God is framed here. There's a verse in Isaiah. God as the teacher, in other words, that this is all one big lesson for us, that God is giving us a lot of metaphors and parables and ways that God is teaching us lessons, and it's not, that's what a teacher has to do. Sometimes it's just giving the straight up information is not going to be as easily absorbed. God is our teacher, and therefore sometimes, so there has to be some concealment. But when Mashiach comes, God, your teacher, will no longer be concealed from you. We'll be able to see things. We can't see it so easily now. We can see it in our mind's eye. But now, let's see how Sarah tried to reverse that somewhat. Text 4. It says, on page 86, it says, he brought her into the tent of Sarah's mother. 1 second, did I do this? No, it's not. Is it? No, I think I did something wrong here. No, I apologize. It's this, I'm sorry, text. Okay. A mist arises from the earth, and what is the plant? This is from the one of our great Kabbalistic commentators, Rabbi Moshe Alshich. Says, our sages said, a mist arises from the earth and waters the plants. This is back then in Genesis, when God is about to form the first human being, Adam, and said that a mist came up and dampened the earth, and God took that clay and fashioned the first body. So what is the language that we're told in the Talmud? as a woman who needs dough with water and then separates challah, so did God take a portion from the earth that is irrigated with water and separate it to form the body of Adam. It's interesting that mitzvah of challah was used there as an understanding of what happened here. There's the whole earth, and God took some of it out to make Adam. So challah was used as a metaphor back then. Now, what does that mean? Clearly, the earth from which Adam was created is associated with the mitzvah separating challah. Why does the Torah choose that? Because it's not just because, well, with dough you take some off. Here he took some. There's an association there. No, it's because in the soul of it, there's a similarity between taking challah and the creation of humanity. Why? It demonstrates the great value of humans over the earth and all their inhabitants. Like the great values the portion of challah has over the rest of the dough. The challah is holy and the rest of the dough is mundane. And the idea is that with challah, we take some off and we say, there's a holy part to it, and the rest can be used holy-wise. But we need to be able to separate and distinguish that this is for the Kohen. For us, humans have the capacity for moral free choice. Humans have the capacity for self-awareness. We have a wonderful globe and wonderful nature, and we have to care about every animal and every leaf and everything in the world. But we are different. We have the capacity to use the world in a righteous way. Your dog, your cat, a leopard in the jungle does not have the capacity for moral free choice. You can train them to do this or do that, but they follow their nature. That's all they are. A leopard who kills in the jungle is not evil. It's doing what it does. We have the capacity to analyze ourselves and say, here, my nature is this. I don't think it's working well. It's not helping me along a moral path. I want to be able to rise above that. I want to discipline my nature. I want to control my nature. So we are the challah of the world. Another parallel between challah and humanity, as we may not benefit from the dough until we separate the challah, so is there no benefit from the earth until Adam was created. So this is in two ways what he's saying here. Number one is that the earth was not complete until Adam was there. But part of it is that, in other words, that sometimes you have to wait to have benefit. Sometimes waiting is okay. And that's also back to a Torah value, some temperance, of recognizing that just because something looks like it's going to be fun and tasty, that may be true. But first, we need to make sure that it's healthy aside from that, but that it's moral. And any time before we eat, we can never, in Jewish life, you can never just pull something and pop it in your mouth. You have to at least say a blessing. So, and part of that is just pause, stop, think. And in text 5a, in this line too, it says, Rabbi Pinchas, the son of Yair, said, abstention leads to purity, purity leads to piety, piety leads to humility, humility leads to fear of sin. I don't like the term fear of sin, but even though it is an accurate translation, but fear in Torah thinking really means respect. And fear of sin would be, if my parents, who can no longer punish me and they can no longer withhold my allowance or anything like that, I wouldn't want to do anything that would give them aggravation. I wouldn't want to do anything that, even if they don't know about it, that would violate my relationship with them. If you want to call that a fear of violating the relationship, that's fine, but it's not a fear of punishment. Fear of punishment is a selfish fear. A fear that comes from love and respect is what we're talking about here. Fear of sin meaning that, oh my gosh, I feel close to God. I don't want to mess with the relationship. That leads to sanctity. Sanctity leads to the presence of the divine. So we don't want to be self-indulgent people either. So there's nothing wrong with eating pizza and chocolate and all these things they can be kosher, and it's fine. But if I know that I have a weakness for something, then maybe it's good for me to hold off, at least occasionally, or to temper it and not have as much as I do, because I can't let my appetites run away with me. And appetite doesn't only mean for food. I have appetites for money, appetites for anything, any type of a pleasure. So abstention is not the goal isn't to be austere. The goal is to be in control of ourselves and not to be owned by things that appear, that sizzle and have an attraction to us, and have a whole sensual beauty, pleasure to us. So Pinchas Menuhin says, first it starts with abstention. And again, abstention is not to punish ourselves. Abstention is to not get totally owned by the pursuit of pleasure. Well, that relates to the family life too. The abstention part is, no one, I don't know if anyone chooses to abstain from physical intimacy just for the sake of doing that. But when the Torah tells us and says, this is a time we have to adjust our connectedness and our love, and it's not going to be so much about what the physical pleasure we're going to get out of it, but it's really about the connection we have. That brings a purity to it. It takes off the taint of the self-interest, which is always going to be there somewhat with the physical intimacy. So if you say text 5b, this is from the Rabbi, this mitzvah, being a sacred foundation of family life, is also impactful to the health and body and soul, to the purity of Jewish children. It's not just about not having sex. It's about an attitude. It's what's the rhythm in your home? What's the ambiance in the home? When we're raising children, it's one thing, but even without that, the home, is it one of self-directed, or is it more about the higher the connection to family, to God? In addition, this mitzvah creates a lasting impact for all the generations of eternal Jewish continuity. As a result of this mitzvah, children are born, grow up in purity, and build their own Jewish homes for generations. Yes. Oh, actually, I read it too without putting it up here. Okay. Now we'll turn to Shabbos. So we spoke about where Sarah, through the taking of the challah, really what she was doing, she was bringing into the world, into society, into her tent, this idea that really had kind of escaped us for a while, since the Adam and Eve. And so she was bringing it into the human experience. And then with the cloud, we have with the idea of the purity. And then we'll get to the Shabbos candles. Let's look at 6a. All who are scrupulous about lighting Shabbos candles merit children who are scholars of Torah. As the verse states, for a mitzvah is a candle and a Torah is a light. Through the mitzvah candle comes the light of Torah. In other words, it's a blessing for us to be able to, when we light Shabbos candles, we're bringing a certain sanctity to the home that affects the home. And what he writes in 6b, the light, there's something that's very special about the Shabbos candles, because even though what we said here is that King Solomon said a mitzvah is a candle, a Torah is light. Any mitzvah is a candle. Torah is always light, but there's something special about Shabbos candles because their light of the other mitzvahs is spiritual. Giving a dollar to a poor person is also light. You don't see light there, but it's a spiritual light. Therefore, the impact on the physical world is indiscernible. Not so for mitzvahs that are performed with physical light. The spiritual light is manifested openly in the physical world. So when we light Shabbos candles, we're bringing physical light, and we're bringing something that's physically appreciable to us, which, again, with Adam and Eve, from the time they ate from that fruit, it became less easily appreciable, the idea of higher thinking, holiness. And now we have something you could see with your eyes that represents that holiness. So now let's get into the Shabbos candles a little bit. There is a verse in Jeremiah talking about how Jews are idolatrous. It says, they say to wood, you are my father. And I just want to make sure. And to stone, you bore us. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything in the chat here. No, okay. So in other words, he's criticizing them. He's saying, this is, look what you did. You look at a piece of wood, a statue, you say, you're my father, and there's stones, and you created us. You didn't do that. But if you remember what I mentioned earlier, wood and stone is an interesting thing they would use that, because what we find in the Code of Jewish Law, Susan, is in page 89 and text 7b, our sages instructed that we place a burning candle on Shabbos in every room that we enter. This ensures peace in the home so we don't stumble on wood or stone. There's a very pedestrian functional core to this idea of lighting Shabbos candles, because you don't want anyone to trip. But there's meaning in why the Talmud selects this idea not to stumble on wood or stone, because they're referring back to that verse in Jeremiah about wood or stone, and we see that in text 7c and 90. Why wood and stone in particular? It's a reference to the verse. They say, to the wood you are my father, and to stone you are bore us. The Talmud is insinuating something to us, intimating something to us. It's possible to turn wood and stone into an idol, God forbid. Shabbos candles keep us from stumbling into wood and stone. And I want to go back to this in a second, but you think about it, Friday night, you light Shabbos candles, and we say that there's this shalom bayis type of idea. When you light the Shabbos candles, you see physical illumination. It's supposed to trigger the idea that it's a time for mental illumination. Yeah, we're busy all week, we're running around, we can't think. And now it's slow it down, stop, unplug from the world, and think about, how am I doing? And if I think about Shabbos, I'm at home, and Shabbos is time to connect with family, thinking, how am I treating my loved ones? Because very often we are tripping on our relationships all week, and we're too busy to notice. And someone maybe was too polite to tell us. It's just, it'll happen Friday night. One of the reasons of Friday night being what we say shalom bayis, peace in the home, is because now I'm just focusing on you. Now it's not that, oh my gosh, I think I shouldn't have said that, but then I got a phone call and I got things, and by the time I'm not even remembering it. Actually, a lot of times I'll remember on Shabbos emails and phone calls I didn't return. Because it's terrible, and I can't do anything about it. Just remember until after Shabbos. But I don't know. It just hits. It's just because things get lost and say, "Oh my gosh, I never reached out. I never responded. Whatever. Sorry. I mean, sorry to some of you. I have to do a better job with that. But the mental illumination and the calm that comes without being swept up in that, it allows us to see where we're tripping. Wood and stone, without the light of Shabbos candles, can metaphorically occasionally cause us to stumble and think that they have independent power to satisfy us, to the extent that we have an idolatrous notion to call wood our father and say to the stone, you bore me. In other words, we misperceive the physicality, and we take it out of its context. The light of the Shabbos and light of mitzvah has direct bearing on the physical world. It ensures that we don't stumble on wood or stone. It shows us that wood and stone are like everything in the world, are under God's dominion. God benefits us through them, but they have no autonomous power, and they must be used for holy purposes. It gives us the power and the setting to be able to get a better look at our world, our relationships and our world, so that we're not taking things out of context and to use an extreme of that to turn a piece of wood into an idol. Okay. So now we're going to look at, read a piece here from a contemporary woman, Sherry Willis. Well, I don't know her, but she wrote a nice piece and they put it in here. It says, do you understand the implication of the candles you light each Friday night? Why was this lofty role placed in your care? It is because of the hidden light within your heart. You possess this special light that can light up your home. Within you is a treasure of love, self-sacrifice, loyalty, and dedication to Judaism. It permeates the souls of your children, goes into the hidden corners of their hearts. So with this powerful light, you do the job. You form the character of your children. And when you care for your children, when you feed them, when you put them to bed, you permeate their souls with the spirit of Judaism. You implant in their hearts the most noble character traits. So when they grow up, they will be loyal members of our nation. It is your job not only to light, but also to protect this light from all that threatens to darken it. You need your Shabbos candles to wage the battle as you establish a pillar of light around your home, to hold your children in your arms so they are always a part of the Jewish people. Through the Shabbos candles, the Jewish home is transformed into a fortress. Only such a fortress will make Judaism strong today, tomorrow, and forever. And here, this is something based on this. So we're talking about Sarah. We're talking about the Shabbos candles. Now, the Rebbe launched a kind of at least in our times, kind of a revolutionary campaign to have girls in many communities, only married women light Shabbos candles. The Rebbe turned that upside down. If you look at this in number 9, it says, this provides us with a clear directive. All Jewish girls must light Shabbos candles, not only after their bar mitzvah, even before the wedding, also when they are young, beginning at the age of 3. If they can understand the meaning of Shabbos candles, we must train them to fulfill the mitzvah of kindling lights for the whole Shabbos. This is something that popularized by Chabad. The Rebbe felt that, and he wrote that girls today, he says girls, he writes, in the olden days, girls' lives were very much managed by their mothers. So their mothers light Shabbos candles. Today, young girls do a lot, they manage their own lives. If they can manage their own lives, they can light their own Shabbos candles. And it says in the era, in text number 10, the era just before the coming of Mashiach, impudence will increase, inflation will spike. This is from the Talmud. Familiar, anyone? The government will turn to heresy and no one will dare to reprimand them. Public meeting places will become arenas of promiscuity. Those who fear sin will be held in disgust and the truth will be absent. The youth will shame elders. Elders will rise in deference to minors. And against whom can we lean for support? Upon our Father in heaven. But this idea is that in a time like this, we need Shabbos candles. And as the Rebbe went further, all of the above, in 11a, all of the above makes it clear that in the modern day, when the world is caught in a thick and intense spiritual darkness, it is especially important that every Jewish daughter light Shabbos candles. This should begin as soon as they reach the age of education, when we can teach them the meaning of Shabbos and Yom Tov candles. And 11b, also from the Rebbe, it says, the light of the Shabbos candles, along with the blessing that each girl will recite, will illuminate her entire life. She will know and remember that God, as she will recite in her blessing, is the King of the world. This will ensure that when she marries, God will be her guiding light. As the mainstay of her home, she will build and establish her home in accordance with God's will on the foundations of Torah and mitzvahs. And this last thing is in Torah thinking, not only ancient Torah thinking, but in current Torah thinking, in a family, everybody matters, but there's only one wife and mom. And the rhythm of the home is very much in her hands. And therefore, her lighting Shabbos candles helps introduce an ambiance of sanctity and purity, which is very, very necessary today. And we turn further also from the Rebbe, 11c. Here we see the power vested in the mitzvah of candlelight, even by a 3-year-old girl. Every Jewish daughter is a daughter of our matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. As such, her candle also illuminates the house for an entire week until the next Friday. The only difference between her and the matriarchs is that their light was openly visible in the physical home. Their physical candles burn miraculously from Friday to Friday. But the reality is that every Jewish woman kindles a spiritual light with her Shabbos candles. Though our physical eyes can't behold this light, our matriarchs' actions blaze the path for us, their descendants, and empower us to illuminate the entire week with our Shabbos candles. It's not just about Shabbos. It's about the home. And Shabbos is a special day, and Shabbos has a special energy. And for the woman to be able to introduce the Shabbos candles, it introduces Shabbos energy, but for the entire week. Sarah, it actually miraculously burned for the week. So you're not going to see that, but the spirituality you do see. Or you don't see. It does exist. And as we close off, text 1297, Lori Palatnik. As I light, I ask myself, am I a light? Am I lighting up my husband, helping him use his talents and greatness? Am I lighting up each one of my children? Am I there for them the way they individually and uniquely need me in their lives today? Am I a light to those who have joined my family? Am I welcoming them with open arms? I guess those join my family for the Shabbos meal, I guess, or those who married into my family. Am I a light to my community, standing up and taking responsibility when there is a need? Am I a light to the Jewish people, using the gifts that God has given me to lead? Am I a light to Hashem? And am I, to use the Torah language, I kiddush Hashem? Do I sanctify? Am I a good ambassador of Judaism? Do I sanctify His name in all that I do? Am I accepting the mission that we're all charged with at Mount Sinai to be a light to the nations? And in all, how can I increase the light? Please, God, help me to burn bright. It's a beautiful little meditation. And the final text here we have from the Medrash. If you observe the candles of Shabbat, God says, I will show you the candles of Zion. As it is written, I will come, meaning Mashiach, and it will come to pass on that day, I will search Jerusalem with candles. I won't require of you at that time to see by the light of the sun. You will see by the light of my glory. As it is written, you shall no longer have the sun for light by day and for brightness. The moon shall not give you light, but God shall be to you for an everlasting light. The nations will walk to your light, as it is written, the nations will walk to your light. And all this why? In the merit of the candles that you light in honor of the Shabbos. So here we have, I'm going to undo this 1 second. Second, if anybody asks. If anyone wants to unmute themselves, any questions and so on, but this is about the lesson was about something we have from Sarah. And again, it doesn't say it in the Torah, the whole Shabbos candle doesn't say in the Torah, but a lot it doesn't say specifically in the Torah. In our tradition, this mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles dates back even before Sarah. And it is a power that we have to bring light not only to our Friday nights and to our dining room table, to our homes, and not just for Shabbos, for the week ahead. So if there are any questions, have those.
I think
Michael has a question. I'm going to say I'll repeat it.
Maybe on Yom Tov or something. You have to light Shabbat candles from an existing flame. Why is that?
Okay, so Michael's asking about the practice of lighting candles from an existing flame. That is, as you say, that is on the holidays, because we're lighting a flame on Shabbat is one of the things we don't do. That's creative. And that's actually scriptural. So lighting Shabbos candles after Shabbos, once Shabbos has begun, better let it be dark, because we don't light them. So we can't, when we light Shabbos candles, we're lighting it before the Shabbos, we light the candle, and then there's the idea, we cover the eyes, and then make the blessing, and now it's like, oh, here's the flame. On the holidays, when you can light a candle, but it always has to be from an existing flame. You can't light a new flame, but you can take from one candle to another candle. You can't do that Shabbos, but you can. So if we leave my stove on, I can light from that on Passover. But I can't do it on Shabbos. So that's what you're.
And if you have an electric stove?
If I have an electric stove, I have an electric stove. That's why I can't use that. So, no, so I before Yom Tov, I put on a yardstick candle. Actually, I put on two, because one of them, my kids and my grandchildren are going to end up blowing out. So I put one in a safe place too.
Got a 24-hour guarantee.
I use 72 hours. I can't. I've learned to hedge. All right, so there any questions? Fine, if not. Oh, actually, next week, I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to be here. We have a conference, our international conference next week, so. Got to think about it. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. The dinner Sunday.
Where is it?
It's in Edison, New Jersey, at the convention center.
Take the morning off.
Wish you all well.
Yeah, but I just have one question.
1 second, Leon.
This is
Yeah,
regarding the.
Leon, you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, so, yes, can you hear me now?
I'm still not hearing you. Uh-oh. Is that, is it my volumes now?
Yeah.
No, my volume looks like it's up. You want to check this out?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I think it's at the door.
I can hear you for what it's worth.
Someone under 30 coming to.
Yeah, the question really that I have is, when the teeth is taken and Hale is
Oh, does this
separated.
one have-
Connect to your speakers. See, hold on.
Anyone else want to try to say something? Reggie, Jerry,
Maybe
wanna say
type it in
hello?
the chat.
I can't hear
maybe-
you either.
Yeah, I'll do
I'm
it.
sorry.
Hold on, we're connected to.
Can you hear me, Rabbi?
Speaker on?
Is there another output option?
We're gonna type it in the chat.
Michael, you want to look? Because
That's-
it's the only option it's giving me is the. Look.
Oh, you really interesting.
Yeah, I got it.
other option.
There's no other option.
Why?
Interesting.
Okay, so
So am I?
now I gotta get back to them. How do I do this? Oh, that's it, right? Okay. Okay, we'll have to heal this for next time, but Leon, I
Yeah, I
got,
just
oh,
placed
when
it in
challah is
chat.
separated from the dough, have rabbis considered community chat area than burning? Which would make sense, right? There are some technical problems with that, because if it has some sanctity to it, you don't want to give it to someone where it's a problem for them to eat sacred food.
Mm.
Yeah, my mind goes there too. All right, we'll get this taken care of next time. Bye-bye.